GM fam. Today we're discussing the difficult issue of censorship and decentralization as it pertains to Ethereum. Now, of course, there's been a ton of regulatory updates, specifically within the United States. SBF has been pushing through his proposal, which would essentially give FTX a monopoly and kill a bunch of DeFi projects. That's outside the scope of all this. We're focusing specifically on this issue of base layer censorship. And specifically at the granular level of when blocks are created, validators are refusing to include certain transactions in blocks that they construct. Is this an existential threat for Ethereum? Is this evidence that proof of stake has failed, as Bitcoin maximalists like to suggest? The answer is actually really nuanced and complicated the more you dig into it. So you first have to start by dividing this into this concept of weak censorship and strong censorship. Strong censorship means that you try and make an illicit transaction and it cannot possibly go through. No one's allowing it through. Weak censorship means that it is permitted, but it might be delayed. And that's where we find ourselves right now. And on this level, I don't actually see a ton of difference between this and when Bitcoin was going through some of the block size debate. Bitcoin became unusable for periods because there was so much transaction spam that was being put through in a bad faith effort to clog the network. And you could argue that this is also a weak form of censorship that Bitcoin faced. And now currently Ethereum is undergoing a weak form of censorship. But it is in fact a weak form of censorship. The good news is that the evidence that we're going to go from this point to the strong form of censorship is rather minimal. The bad news is that we have to get through this issue of weak censorship. So essentially what's going on now is half these blocks are censoring transactions and half the blocks aren't, which means that if you want to get your transaction through, instead of taking 12 seconds, it now costs 24 seconds. And this could be an issue if you're a true DeFi degen and you need to get your transaction through instantly. This extra wait time could make DeFi essentially unusable for addresses that find themselves censored. But it's not really a cut and dry situation, though, because we do actually think that there is arguments for why people as block producers would want to censor blocks. So one of them was, there was a very interesting poll that was going around by LATETOT, latetot.eth. They pose the question, if I'm a solo home validator in country A and we're at war with country B, and I decide that I'm not going to include donations to their military because they're trying to kill me, when it's my turn to make a block, should the validator accept or reject this? And people were evenly divided. When it gets down to issues like this, it's maybe a more difficult question. So even though we're on the side of being against censorship, we recognize that it could be a difficult issue in some cases. Also, we've asked all of our users, particularly those in the United States, to comply with the OFAC sanctions until they get their hearing in the court of law. So some people might interpret this and say, well, if I'm running a validator, then I should work to censor these transactions until it's safe, because they don't want the government to attack them. Fearing government reprisal seems to me like a valid reason that you might want to censor blocks if given the option. Now, that being said, the community is working towards solutions for this. So we also go over this in the when we talk about how the community could face off strong censorship. But for example, things like encrypting all the transactions in the mempool so that people can only see the tip would kind of force everyone to be blindly accepting transactions because they wouldn't have the capability of discriminating. This is on Ethereum people's radar, but the argument philosophically is that before we move to this, we need to have a situation where people can voluntarily exit, aka get to the Shanghai update where users can withdraw. So that's remaining the priority, but this is something that they're keeping a close eye on. So even though that there is some censorship going on in terms of slowing transactions, if not prohibiting them, the real nightmare scenario is this kind of question of, could we move to strong censorship? And now, especially now that 51% of blocks are not going to be censorship resistant. And fortunately, this seems pretty far off. This is more like the 51% attack. The attack vector for this looks like essentially if governments go to, let's say, Lido and Coinbase and compel them to start refusing to build new blocks that are built on transactions that include transactions that they desire to be censored, which would essentially create a brand new blockchain that is completely writing out certain addresses and making it incapable for people to transact with them. So first of all, there's already strong, let's say, social protection against this. So for example, Brian Armstrong at Coinbase, who's proving himself incredibly based in this entire conversation, has said that they would just withdraw from stakings before they cross these lines. Additionally, Ethereum as a protocol has the capability of slashing and has declared that they would do so if they saw users moving to this. And in the most extreme event, in the event of a actual kind of 51% split, the community is looking to, and has said that they would just do a hard fork. They would say, all right, there's going to be two chains, one that's pursuing Ethereum's vision and one that's pursuing Gensler's vision. And there may be some turbulence in that, especially as like maybe USDC had to move to the Gensler's vision chain. But this would actually end up forking Ethereum into a more censorship and less censorship resistant one. So it's kind of like a poison pill, but they're willing to do it and have said that they would. So there's very strong social pressure against this, and some of the technology solutions could actually be enforcing into the code, automating if there's going to be a hard fork based on certain conditions that they would consider unacceptable censorship. It's actually kind of difficult to architect this, which is why it would take some time to get there, but it could happen. It could happen. So it's really interesting stuff. It's worth highlighting because this is becoming a bit of an argument among Bitcoin maxis. They like to say that, oh no, Ethereum has been captured by the World Economic Forum, and it's now like the WEF chain. And I don't see this argument as true. So first of all, if you just listen to the devs, they recognize the problem and they're going to build solutions. And if you just listen to any of the talks by the Ethereum devs, you understand that neutrality is a very important principle for them, and they consider this part of their mission, and they're frankly smarter than the people they're fighting. So they do not bet against the Ethereum devs on this one. Also, it's kind of silly to assign this to a flaw in proof of stake when this attack vector was available against Ethereum even during proof of work. It's just happened to kind of happen recently, maybe because of or coincidental with the merge. But it would also be a viable attack vector against Bitcoin, which some Bitcoiners are realizing. So hopefully Bitcoin maxis are not trying to use this as an argument to like ban Ethereum or cozy up to the government, but hopefully the people in the Bitcoin community that also think that censorship resistance is important see Ethereum as allies here, because we could use all the help that we could get. It's a complicated issue, and we're certain that Ethereans are going to prevail in this, but just be warned, it's going to be a journey, and there may be a period where this sort of weak censorship actually increases and makes life much more difficult over the next few years. So that's the state of things as I see it. Would be interested in hearing your thoughts and comments. So drop them below and we'll get back to you. Stay safe, friends.